work with Zoom. I teach with other programs. But again, welcome, especially to the ones that were a little bit late. Today, I'd like to talk about 3 ingredients for the education in the 21st century, which are entrepreneurship, networking, and international education. I was already explaining a little bit about myself. About 4 years ago, I started a business, H2 Knowledge Transfer. H2 stands for Hans Hasselt, as you might see. And I think it's important that we, if we want to solve things globally, that we also know each other, and that makes it important to get to know each other. And of course, we can travel, but it's almost impossible to travel the whole world, especially in this year during the COVID-19 crisis. So online connection becomes very important. I teach sustainable development and also intercultural communication, but you have to be aware of the fact that I've never visited your beautiful country. I've heard so many beautiful stories about your country, but that gives me some problems because I cannot completely understand the situation locally in your country, in your culture, in your region. I was for 15 years a course director for international programs. At first, I was able to travel. About 20 years ago, I was able to travel to many countries. And I, of course, continued with that also until recently. But I considered it more important that a lecturer travels, that's nice, but students should travel and then create international communities. And universities are good hosts because you can learn a lot. You can learn other people. You can learn about new things that you cannot easily experience in your own country or culture. And by returning then to your home country or maybe even to other places, you can take this knowledge with you and use it and apply it elsewhere. I also do some research in education and pedagogy, and that's what I also would like to tell a little bit about. So then, Batu, I made a short questionnaire because I'm also curious, who are you? So I stopped the share. And I would like to do a short questionnaire.
Yeah. Okay.
If things are not clear or if I speak too fast, or do not hesitate to mention something in the chat, because then I can speak more slowly, but that's not always easy for me.
Okay, so I'm going to launch the proofs. Do you want to is total in total is 5 questions, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. ဟုတ်ပြီကျွန်တော်ဒါလေး6လောက်ဖတ်ပြီးရခါကြလို့ရှင်6လောက်ဖြည့်ပြပါအောင်နော်ဟုတ်
Yes, I'd just like to know a little bit who you are and what kind of experiences you have.
Me ရလားမသိဘူးညကျွန်တော်ပြထားတယ်မြင်ရတယ်နော် Okay. Okay ပေးလို့ရလားမသိဘူးကျွန်တော် Okay.
Take your time.
နံပါတ်1ကကြတော့ကိုယ့်ရဲ့အကြောင်းမိတ်ဆက်တော့ပေါ့နော်ဒီခါကျတော့ကိုဘာလဲဆိုတဲ့ဟာကိုတစ်လောက်ယူပေးပါနံပါတ်2ကကြတော့ကို educational experience ကမြန်မာနိုင်ငံမှာလေ့လာထားရလူတွေလားဘွဲရတာနိုင်ငံခြားဘွဲရတာလားဗမာနိုင်ငံခြားဘွဲရတာလားပေါ့နော်နံပါတ်3ကကြတော့ကိုနိုင်ငံခြားနေပြီးတော့ပညာရေး system တခုသွားလေ့လာခြင်းတဲ့အခါကျလို့ရှိရင်ကိုဘယ်လိုလုပ်ရမလဲဆိုတော့ကိုအနေနဲ့သိလာအောင်ပေါ့နော်နံပါတ်4ကကြတော့ကိုအလုပ်လုပ်နေရဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ကိုကသူများရှိမှလုပ်တာလားကိုပိုင်အလုပ်တည်ထောင်ပြီးလုပ်နေရလားဒါမှမဟုတ်တခြားအလုပ်အသစ်ကိုရှာနေရလားပေါ့နံပါတ်5ကကြတော့သူခုဒီနေ့ title ဖြစ်တဲ့ education 4.0 ဆိုတာ 4.0 ဆိုတာဘာလဲဆိုတာသိရဖန်အောင်ပေးရတာပေါ့နော် Okay ကျွန်တော်အကုန်လုံးဖြည့်ပေးပါနော်သူကOkay
I participated myself. So I guess we can see the results.
Yeah, so we are still waiting for more people to vote. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's enough, over 80%. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna end the poll and okay, wait. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So a majority are university students at undergraduate level, but fortunately also some are do work, are employee or self-employed. The majority, yeah, really has only education in Myanmar. A few also went abroad. So that's interesting because I would like them also maybe to share their experiences, perhaps later on in the last half hour for the question time. But of course, if they have questions somewhere intermediate, they can also ask questions. Deciding on further education. Yes, everyone fortunately believes that education is important for and that it can be interesting also to do some foreign education. If you are an employee or self-employed, do you like to study further for finding a different job? Yes, also a large group, 40% likes to find a job in a different organization, and they like to many of them also like to have more knowledge and experience. And fortunately, because I'm going to talk about Education 4.0, and I hope it's an interesting title, that you can answer it more positively, that you know a little bit more about Education 4.0 after this lecture. Thank you, Batu. Then I will switch back to, I have a little bit understanding, some workers, most of it students, most of it experiences in education only in Myanmar, but some also abroad. Thank you very much for answering. Then I go back to my presentation, because I know now a little bit who are you. And I will tell you a little bit more about the structure of the presentation of this morning. First, I'd like to briefly explain some global developments. I will do that from a Western perspective. Asia is rapidly developing, but I will look, because I've been to Asia several times, Indonesia, China, Vietnam, Bhutan, India. So I've seen a lot in Asia, and I see also the fast developments there. But I thought it would be interesting from a Westerner, from a European Union citizen, to look from a Western point of view. Then I will explain some expectations for employment, only a little bit, and then the developments in education. What is education 1.0, 2.0, 3.0? And I think at the moment I'm more involved in the 3.0 type of education, but I like to make the next step to the 4.0 education, and I like to do that also in combination with Hisam. Then I will explain, in my point of view, what is important for education in the 21st century, and I would like to discuss three important aspects: networking, international education, and entrepreneurship. So then I hope you know what Education 4.0 means, And depending on the time available, I also have some examples from the Netherlands or for projects where I worked with some aspects of Education 4.0. And then, of course, there's time for questions from you. And I hope there will be plenty, because I always like to answer questions. And that can be all kinds of questions about education, about yourself, or things that I explained that are not clear. But let's start. If I look to global developments, then let's say from a Western point of view, then I see from economic changes that the main developments now are happening in the eastern part of the world, in Asia. And the West is more or less stabilizing. Economically, there is still some growth, but it's very much depending also on what happens in Asia. In new developments in research. That's one aspect. The second aspect is that we deal with finite resources. The limitations of the earth become visible, and we should try to get to a circular economy. So not mining iron and build new cars, but trying to use cars, build cars perhaps with less iron, but also reuse iron in a circular economy, and not, of course, only for iron, but also for all kinds of other substances, compounds that we really need in our economy. And that also requires a different kind of designing. And we should design them in a way that they do not end up at a waste dump or as plastic in the ocean, but we should find a circular economy. And that's a real big challenge. We're also focusing on a different a change in energy system. There's sufficient energy available, but at the moment we have mainly make use of fossil fuels, and we should go to a renewable energy system with solar energy, wind energy, geothermal energy, and this requires big investments. Also in capacity for storage of energy. And fossil fuels you can use almost every day at any time, but at night there's no solar energy. So we have to find solutions for that. And I also see in economic changes that we become less materialistic, but we like to share more things. Why should we all have a lawn mower? We can also use it from the neighbors. Or why do we need to buy a refrigerator? Because we can also maybe buy cooling or coolness. I will explain that later on as well. Then you have social changes. There's still population growth globally, and you see a tendency that more and more people start living in urbanized areas. I guess that's the situation in Myanmar as well. I apologize for the fact that I do not know much about your beautiful country. You see an increased education level globally. People consider the importance of education, just as you did in the poll. You see increased mobility. At the moment, there's maybe a decrease because of the COVID, but people can easily travel almost anywhere on Earth if they have the facilities, especially the money, of course. And you see a tendency from more employed jobs to more self-employed. And in some kind, sometimes these jobs are really high-level jobs, but in many cases these are also very low-level. I think, for instance, on pizza delivery jobs. In the Netherlands, there are also self-employed. And that's not easy, because then you have to cycle a lot to earn a good living, which is almost impossible. Then you see the environmental challenges, like climate change. This is a big issue at the moment. I'm not sure if you also can see signs in weather changes in your country, But recently, in the last 20 years, we had very long hot summers that are rare to the Netherlands. You see a biodiversity decrease, partly because of the fact that we were not really aware of the importance of biodiversity in the last decades. And in the 21st century, we try to make up this a little bit. But if things have disappeared, they do not return, of course, easily. We still suffer a little bit from pollution and mining and landscape degradation because of that, but also because of the urbanization. We need land to buy and to build and to live on, and that also causes land degradation. Then you have the last part, the technological changes, which is, for instance, automation, robotization. You see that many things, cars are almost completely manufactured nowadays with robots. So that makes it more difficult for people to find a job. But it also gives opportunities. There's access to knowledge around the world. If you're good in searching and finding in Google, you have access to knowledge. And maybe perhaps it also requires some language skills. I saw in this Dare to Learn event that there was also a class on the importance of Chinese. I can only recommend that, because if you speak more languages, then the world becomes much bigger and you have access to new knowledge that is not available perhaps in your country. In my country, we speak Dutch, so not English. We teach in English, but only at university level. And if you really have something important to say, then you probably say it in English, because then more people in the world can read it, or you say it in Chinese, or you write it in Chinese. I'm not good in Chinese, unfortunately, but I speak some languages, but unfortunately not Chinese. Then, of course, the internet, the accessibility and the connectivity becomes very important as a technological change. Even refrigerators are smart at the moment. Doorbells become smart. This creates all kinds of new opportunities for us, global civilization around the world, if we have the right skills, if we have the good understanding and the creativity. The connectivity through social networks and the networking, I will explain a little bit more also later on this. The fact that we're now together and that we can learn from each other. I also like to learn from you, from your questions later on. That is really important and becomes probably even more important. And the fact that in the last decades, we were very human driven, and in many cases that's still the case, but you see also big tech entrepreneurs, companies, they deal with data-driven algorithms, and they decide on what you see and what you know. And yeah, that is something that is either a threat, but also, of course, an opportunity. That's always with technological changes. It depends on the people how to use it. So I hope you recognize some of these developments. And then the importance for this class is, of course, what does this mean for jobs and employment for a young generation that has to decide or just decided on a part of their future? Now let's look at robotization. This is a research from 2013 from Mr. Fry and Mr. Osborne that show that the probability of computerization of jobs, the loss also of jobs because of computerization, including robotization, is not only in low employment. Actually, even in low employment, it's not too bad, but also in high employment, there's a large opportunity that jobs become computerized. And maybe you cannot understand at the moment. I'm not sure about the level of high employment jobs in Myanmar, but in the Netherlands we're already working for over 20 years on what so-called expert systems for law. A judge has to know before he takes it or she takes a decision what was happened in the past, but computers can do that much faster and much more fair than people. Yeah, that could be, for instance, high employment jobs that will be computerized in near future. What is then still bottlenecks for computerization? And you can turn this around. You can also say, if these are the bottlenecks for computerization, then these are still the opportunities for human beings, for people to work on. And this is divided into three categories. The first one is perception and manipulation. And these are things that are still too complicated for computers, for robots to do. And that requires finger dexterity. That's if you something is really difficult and it can only be done by hands. And in many places around the world, I guess in Myanmar it's the same. Usually these are female hands because they have a better dexterity than human male hands. You also have the manual dexterity where you have to use your two hands. And for robots, that is still a little bit complex, but perhaps it will also change. And the last thing is cramped workspace and awkward positions where robots cannot easily enter, for instance, in a sewer system. Yeah, these are still jobs that are difficult to computerize, but of course not always have the nicest opportunities for interesting jobs. But in many cases, or in some cases, of course, that can also be a challenge. Then you have the creative intelligence, where originality and creativity is important, like in arts and fine arts, where people write poems or people make music or write books or design websites, for instance. This can be done by computers already, but the creativity is still rather low because it is programmed. And then the last part, which is also really connected to the social intelligence and human behavior, are social perceptiveness, the human interaction, how we see each other. Things like negotiations that computers cannot really do. Persuasions, also a thing that humans are still much better. And assisting and caring for others. That's how you see robots also available in healthcare, especially also in elderly care, where you can have a chat with a robot if you're a little bit lonely, but really caring and assisting, that's still not the case. So if you, what does this mean then for a young generation, and how can they participate? I think the answer is more or less clear, and you already admitted that yourself in the poll. Education, research, knowing about the new developments, this is how you can participate in this new world society of the 21st century. So maybe the question that is interesting to you, I'm still a little bit old-fashioned. I started working in 1988, and I work now for over 30 years, like I explained, 32 years, still more or less in the same kind of job in education. Of course, education changed a lot in these 32 years, but I wonder if students that get a degree at the moment still will be working for 30 years, more or less in the same kind of job. I don't know. So let's look at maybe jobs for the next 5, 10, or maybe 15 years. And I consider 15 years already a little bit long. And these, of course, will also develop within the period of time. But this is the main question that many educators, many universities, many people that are involved in education consider as an important question, because the world is changing rapidly And if we want to educate students for a prosperous future, then we have to know a little bit about this future. And that's very difficult for human beings to predict the future. So what do we know? How do we prepare students for this? We do not exactly know what kind of jobs we have. And maybe from other point of view, are we as educational sector, that means lecturers, professors, directors of institutes, are we prepared for this? The question is clear, I guess. The answer is a little bit difficult, of course, and it depends very much on how people are involved in this kind of questions. And I think that's important for everyone in education, that education is not just continuing the current business. No, it's in a fast development. So let's make a thought experiment. I'm not sure if you know what a thought experiment is, but we're going to do an experiment in mind, and you can consider the answers for yourself. So I have to take a small note, but that's difficult because I'm sharing my my screen at the moment. But suppose you have a stage, and on this stage is a curtain, and you do not know what is behind the curtain. And then with some kind of other experiment, we take someone from 100 years back, someone, maybe your grandparent, becomes alive. He was living in 1920, about the age that you have at the moment. Consider this in mind, and we bring him back now to 2020. So he is suddenly in a new world that he doesn't know, and you can imagine this. We put him or her on stage, and he is able to ask questions about this new world. What kind of questions would you have if you've been away for 100 years? Then maybe the first question is a little bit simple. That is something like, I just woke up and I saw that the moon is still there. Oh, that's nice. Do you know what is the distance between the Earth and the moon? Now, and then within 5 seconds, the answer appears. And there's an answer saying the total distance between Earth and moon is so many kilometers. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. And yeah, I guess the sun is also still there. So what's the distance between the sun and the Earth? And again, within 5 seconds, the answer is available. Then maybe a more difficult question. Where am I now? And then suddenly, again, from behind the curtain, this voice appears and say, you're living in Myanmar, for instance. And in 1920, Myanmar did not exist in the same way as it did like right now. It was founded in 1948. And so this person should be amazed about all these fast answers that appear suddenly. And then the curtain moves. And what do you see? There's a 14-year-old child with an iPad answering and Googling all these questions and answering them instantly. The question is still there. How much smarter are we since 1920? Do you really think that we became much smarter than your grandparents? I'm not sure. Oh, there's someone writing in the presentation to make it a little bit more creative, I guess. So if this, do you really think that humans became much more smarter? I think the world around us changed a lot. And that gives us all kinds of new opportunities, because finding these answers to these questions, it became much more easy. But I don't think that people became much smarter. And we have maybe better education, but for the rest. So what does this mean? That we have this access to all kinds of information around the world? what does it mean for education? Our education system looks a little bit like this. We treat, I'm not sure again if this is the case in Myanmar as well, but especially at secondary school, this is still the case also in the Netherlands. We have all different talents, but for general education, we all have the same kind of exam. And of course, some can easily pass these exams, while for others it is impossible. And yeah, then this creates also lack of opportunity for at least some of them. For the elephant, which has very clear qualities, he cannot climb the tree. So yeah, it gives him less opportunities in this education system. So let's answer one of the questions that I asked in the poll. What is 4.0 kind of education? 1.0 is the fact that in the past, for the Netherlands, I consider this a little bit, let's say, medieval times, also 17th, 18th century. In 19th century, we got the second 2.0 type of education. But in those days, we only had a master, someone who was able to do something like a baker, and he was teaching this to an apprentice, a learner, someone who was not able to do it, but became trained, but person to person. And we had all kinds of guilds, as they were called. And with this way, we could have bakeries and butcheries and blacksmiths and goldsmiths and writing and printing. And but it was one-to-one education mostly, or sometimes in a small group, 1 to 3, 1 to 4. But yeah, this is first generation education. Second generation education is the industrialized education. You have a master and a class, and it's something we all, I think, can understand because we have all experienced this. One teacher, 30 students, sometimes a little bit less, sometimes much more. And there was a blackboard. We had books and libraries because we could not buy all the books, so we could also rent some in libraries. We had classes, lots of theoretical classes, and compared to first generation education, less practice. Because the first generation was almost only practice, a little bit individual examination. And individual, I mean all students had individual, the same examination. And we focused on subjects. So we did not focus on the world anymore, not on the bakery world, not on the blacksmith world, but we focused on several subjects: languages, English, Dutch in my country, mathematics, history, geography. But of course, these are all kinds of divisions of the world. We can look back and we call it history, but history is also very much related to geography and even to biology. So this is a way that we invented to teach in an industrialized education subject. And it looks a little bit like this. The balloons are still empty, so the children can still consider themselves what they want to think, but they all have to think more or less in the same way and are all taught in such a way that they have more or less the same approach to society. And this is very good in an industrialized world where you have to work in a machinery factory for 40 years, because then we all know exactly what we can expect from the students. Then the third generation education, and you see that on the picture, you see a large group, all with, in this case, Apple computers, most of them. And there's still the master and the class, but the class size depends sometimes a little bit on in group size. And what became very important in third generation education is the internet and the connectivity that we have. So knowledge is partly freely available, and not everything is for free, but universities have usually also libraries and access to more knowledge than individual companies or people, applying becomes more important. At least in my university, we do not focus that much anymore on theory only, but we teach students how to apply this theory. We have assignments where they have to produce professional products, and professional products require all kinds of skills, and professional products are things like a report or a web page or a meeting, or things that happen also and are very clear to explain to people that are not in universities. In second generation education, you had to do a test to pass the exam, but in third generation education, you have to make products that are easily recognizable for people outside the university, and by giving a presentation or holding a meeting or making a report. These kind of things, or maybe a design of an area, or maybe a plan for protecting the environment. These are all professional products that are also valuable outside the university, not only within the university. Now, there's still frequent physical presence in 3.0 education, where there's lectures with theory and knowledge, tutors for students to help them learn and interpret the theory, and also to deal with social interactions between students. Then we have professionals, because they can more relate better than lecturers. Lecturers are better in theory, but professionals are better in application of theory in practice. And of course, we have peers that are in the same level. And with them, you can also learn. You learn a lot from peers by collaborating, by asking them questions if they understand it in the same way, or by doing things together. So peers are very important for learning, especially in Education 3.0. And lots of learning also happens within the collaboration for making products. These professional products, a presentation can be made by one person, but usually if you have to present for an audience, then it is more interesting to have a small group, because then you can incorporate different perspectives in the same kind of presentation. I need a little bit of drink, so just a few seconds before I will explain what is then 4.0 education, the fourth generation education. This is the education that I'm working on at the moment within our university. And I see that happening in Europe a lot. And the difference between third generation education is enormous increase of connectivity and diversity. And because the third generation education mainly happens within strict, closed societies, like the groups we had also in the second generation education. So students from the same area, from the same neighborhood, from the same country or the same region. But in fourth generation education, we have the opportunities for connecting to people elsewhere in the world, and we also collaborate with them. And we also means that we also learn with them. So that compared to the third generation education, we have more groups of individuals that individually work as a group on certain kinds of projects in order to learn and develop things. We have an increased diversity, and we use the networks more clearly. And networks, of course, can be nationally, but these are more international networks. And not only the human connection, I will explain a little bit more on networks later on, but also, of course, the internet network that can connect us. So that's even more visible. And because of the COVID-19 crisis, it became much more clearer for everyone that we can continue with learning. At least it has also some qualities to connect online. It cannot completely replace the physical learning, because it's very important, especially also for the social interaction and for the social learning. But for distance learning, the networks have great opportunities. So what universities will offer in this 4.0 generation education is lectures, formal lectures, and they can be online or offline, with coaching and tutoring for helping the students in order to understand the theory and apply it. We have still the facilities. Sometimes we need laboratories for instance, chemistry classes, but we also have still classrooms where we can meet, and we have library facilities, just as in previous years, but perhaps more access to places also elsewhere around the world. We have international networks, professional contacts. It becomes important that you know people from different places that have a little bit the same interest and the same way of working, or maybe a completely different way of working, that you can relate to, that you can invite, that you can meet online or physically. And physically is usually very expensive because that requires traveling, but online we can easily meet, much easier. We have assignments, so not exams and tests, but assignments that in which you have to create something, you have to deliver some professional product. The peers are not longer the ones that you are that you see around in the classroom, but are also students elsewhere in the university or elsewhere around the world that you know from your network, but that also have the same interest, the same kind of discipline, like business management, or that they have a different discipline. For instance, what Batu mentioned, water management, or maybe healthcare, so that people from different groups, from different disciplines form groups for learning and for delivering assignments. Then the examinations will change also completely, because if you only work with groups, with people with different backgrounds, with different nationalities, then it becomes much more important that you measure personal growth, so that the examinations will be based partly on what the group can manage and what the group can deliver, and partly individually on how you have developed yourself. So students in this kind of education decide then on the subjects, the assignments they like to do, the place and the pace. So where am I doing this assignment? And maybe you want to do an assignment for me in the Netherlands. You can still stay in Myanmar, and I connect you to a Dutch student, and you can work together. And you can decide on when you want to finish it. There are only 4 options a year, and then you have to submit. So that means that you can have a part-time job next to education, because you also need to eat. So I hope you now understand a little bit about the generations. I also put it in a graph for those of you that are interested in more the mathematical part. The first generation education had the master and the apprentice. There was a lot of personal attention, but the number of students were low. In the second generation education, there was an enormous increase in number of students, but the personal attention was rather low. In the third, it already increased a little bit. And in the fourth, I think we need to go back to a high level of personal attention, because people are different. People have different needs, different talents, and we should not all assess them or tutor them in the same way. And this is still to be achieved, by the way. And the 4.0 education is not far, as I know, present in educational institutes that I know. This is a little bit the choices that students can make. In the first, if you want to become a baker, you only had one option. You need to find a good bakery, a master that could teach you. In the second generation, there was an enormous increase, but there was still the same kind of choice, not much. You could maybe decide for engineering or for economics or for healthcare. There were only a few options. In the third generation already that increased, but in the fourth generation, students individually are able to make, with large groups of students, individual choices. So I thought a lot. I drink a little bit coffee and then I'll continue with this question. But let's try to summarize what we already discussed. I started with what I expect for changes in the world, and what this means. What does this mean for finding jobs, and how is education, at least some educational institutes, working on this at the moment, trying to achieve this more interdisciplinary, intercultural kind of education. And so what does this mean for students and for the learning itself? So there are so-called 21st century skills. And these are important skills because if we have access to knowledge, then remembering is not the most important thing anymore. That can easily be done by computers, much better than humans. So within basic education level, which means primary and maybe also secondary school, we should really still teach the most important things like literacy, numeracy, so that you can read and you can write, you can calculate, and that you are digitally skilled, that you can work with simple software computers, that you understand a little bit how you can exchange files, simple things. But we also have to teach them educational, ethical reasoning. What is fair? What is not fair? Children usually learn that already by playing a lot. And sports is also a very good thing for instance, group collaboration. So this is the basic education level. But it comes down to less memorizing, but finding and searching. So digitally skilled, trying to find answers, and also the reliability of answers, because it's not easy, not difficult to find answers, but it's usually difficult to find good answers that are reliable and a little bit not outdated, those kind of things. So it's more focused on analyzing, evaluating, and creating. And if you look at Bloom's taxonomy, this is a model that is often used in education, and maybe you can read it later on completely if you're interested. Then the lowest level is remembering, so that in a test you can easily test if students can remember things. It becomes already a little bit more interesting if they can also understand it, so they do not only remember it but also can say in what conditions it needs to be. It is important. Applying is even much better. A higher level is analyzing, evaluating, how did it go, and even creating is considered as the highest level. And this is also the way that I think education and students should develop themselves. The remembering and understanding is maybe the easy part at the moment, but we should try to find and create and evaluate, analyze the world around us and create new things. So these are the 21st century skills, and that means that for the learning skills we have critical thinking, creative thinking, collaborating and communicating, literary skills, information literacy, so that we know what to find and how to find and can evaluate the quality. We have media literacy and technology literacy, and the life skills, flexibility, taking initiatives, social skills in collaboration and interaction, productivity. That means that we do not only know things, but we can also make things in a certain period of time, and leadership, so that we can at least manage ourselves, but preferably also others or a group. We also know from learning that it does not happen within the comfort zone. If we feel safe and in control, then we can do things, but we do not learn a lot. It's more repetition. We already practiced it once, and it feels good. We can redo it, or sometimes in a small step, improve it a little bit. But we have to get out of this comfort zone. We have to go into the fear zone, and preferably even the learning zone, where we can acquire new skills, maybe new language skills, or new intercultural skills if we travel to another country. So this is the challenge for students, and therefore internationalization, which I will talk about later, is very important. So I have to speed up a little bit because we only had 1 hour. I already introduced, so I hope this is not a surprise, 3 elements for designing the education of the 21st century. These contribute to 4.0 education: network and networking, internationalization, and entrepreneurship. Now, the network is very valuable. This is a little bit a kind of joke. I'm not sure if you've ever heard about Maslow's pyramid. There's a lot of discussion about it, but it says that the physiological safety is the basis of human behavior. We need food, we need water, we need oxygen, we need shelter and warmth, and we can grow to a self-actualization level in the high level. But at the moment, most of us consider Wi-Fi the most important basic value in order to communicate and work. But networking, so networking in my case is not really about the digital network, but about the human network, the connecting. If we know people from other places, and that's very easy in social networks, we can easily discover and find people that have the same interests, and that means that we can also collaborate with them. And we can collaborate one-to-one, but we can also collaborate in groups. That becomes also easily available, and that makes it interesting. And networking is as weak as the strongest bond. So that's always, also with a necklace, it is as strong as the weakest bond. So a network is strong if the bonds are strong. So let me show you an example of how networking and networks work. This is a famous example. It's from Estonia, which is a country in the north area of Europe. And in Estonia, littering used to be a very big problem. And the government calculated that to clean it, it would take 3 years, and it would cost 22.5 million euro, which is quite a high amount. And that means that not much action is taken. But what did they do? There was a volunteer, and that said that if I'm hiking outside or walking somewhere, I can easily take a picture of the waste that I see. And if I take a picture, we also know the coordinates where the picture was taken. And if we do that for 364 days a year, then we have an increased map of the country where all the waste is put. And then we only need to manage it. And if we find volunteers, and in this case, there's 1 day a year in Estonia where they have cleanup day, National Cleanup Day. And there are volunteers, about 50,000, which is 4% of the total population. So it's not a high percentage, but 50,000 people, all, of course, in their own neighborhood, spend 1 day, the 365th day of the year, and then they collect 10,000 tons of litter. It costed much less than if the government would have made it, and it's completely done by volunteers, by making pictures, putting it on the map, managing that the waste is transported, and that's actually the cost of the 500,000 euro that is spent. A very simple way. I also thought a very creative way. It's already existing since 2008. Now, this is a network, was my network. What is important in a network is reputation. If you know someone only digitally, then you do not have really a good reputation yourself, and you do not know much about the reputation of the other person. But by collaborating, you start to trust them. And this trusting is the reputation in the network. So if you require something from someone else, are they willing to do it? Or you can turn it around. If I ask you something to do it, are you willing to do it for me? That depends a little bit on your benefit. If you like to do it and if you have benefit of it, and usually it is in human behavior. If I do something for you, you will do something for me. That's a kind of social cultural currency, and it's called a WUFI. It means a kind of reliableness of the network. How good, how reliable are the people that you have in your network, and are they willing to do something for you? Interesting aspect of networking. So what can networks bring for teaching and learning? It can give more diversity, more flexibility, and a bigger scope, because you not longer dependent on the network that you have around us, but you can connect to the global society. So how do we deal with students? I will do this briefly, because at the moment, if students collaborate, then it's usually not very much appreciated. And cooperation, I already mentioned, is learning. If you cooperate, you learn from each other. But copying is also seeing, is a way that is a negative way of cooperating. So we should find ways that copying becomes learning, and it can be assessed instead of copying. Usually is in education not very much appreciated. But I think when we start working in groups and you work with a student in the Netherlands and you copy things from each other, it can means that we both learn, and that is a change in society, in education. Then the second part, I have 5 minutes more, and then I will start the discussion. Internationalization, I think I will keep it brief. With the examples I already gave, it is clear that the world is out there for you, and you can use it. But it requires also something. It requires some intercultural communication skills, because people in other places have different beliefs, different experiences. And these are the interesting things, because it brings you out of the comfort zone, but these are also sometimes difficult. So internationalization can teach you, by connecting to other people at other places, things that are perhaps not known to you, or completely new. And internationalization in this way also creates open minds. So there's a model for it. But on average, you could say the most simple thing for internationalization is going abroad, but that's usually very expensive and not available to everyone. You can also do it at home. That means that universities have to attract foreigners, and then you can meet them. But of course, the new step is virtually and digital classrooms. And that means that we should not only put students together, but we should create assignments that they can really collaborate in a good way, in a digital way, but also can learn from the experiences and from the different cultures. Now, the third part is the entrepreneurship. That is, I think, the third part for education, 4.0 education, where creativity and courage comes along. Of course, we also need sometimes investments and marketing and all kinds of other aspects, but courage and creativity and innovation is very interesting and very important. I'd like to show you one example. This is, maybe you see the background of Shanghai. And Shanghai, like Beijing in China, are cities where high levels of air pollution are occurring because of industry, a little bit transportation, but a lot of it is already done in industry. The air pollution usually consists of all kinds of organic carbon-based substances. And if you know something about carbon, then you also know that one of the most expensive materials on Earth are diamonds. Diamonds are made of carbon. So what this designer, Daan Rozegade, he's a Dutch designer, did is he sold to Chinese people a certain amount of clean air. And how did he make the air clean? He built a large vacuum cleaner, really huge, to clean the air. And that, of course, cost a lot of energy. And you need to clean the filters, but the filters contain the carbon. And with a high pressure, he could turn the carbon from the air pollution into diamonds. So Chinese people could buy clean air and they produced a diamond with it, so they can use it for weddings, for honeymoons, for asking someone you love to marry you. I thought this is a wonderful concept. It's about the creativity that you turn a pollution problem into something really valuable, like a diamond, and you create clean air. This is the same designer who designed a kind of paint that lights up in the dark if there's a little bit light. And this bicycle, this person on the bike creates a little bit light with the lamp, and then you can see the bicycle path appearing. For cars, it is like this. This is the paint you see on the sides of the road. So we do not need lighting anymore, because that is not good for biodiversity. It attracts birds and animals, and they are killed along the road. So this designer used all kinds of paint to light certain parts of the Netherlands. This is another way, creativity with 3D printing, where Lego and K'NEX, two kinds of toys that are often used in the Netherlands, are connected. There are no connections between K'NEX and Lego, but with 3D printing, you can make your own connections. This is also kind of creativity. Perhaps you see what this person is wearing. I always thought that I use it in the bathroom, but this is a wonderful way, a very creative way to show, to present some food. This is another one. I thought it was very creative. It's made on Iceland. Of course, this looks like this pedestrian walkway is lifted, but of course this is imaginary. You can just drive along or over it. But if you see this in the distance, then you slow down, because you think, hey, this is strange. And of course, this might only happen to people that are not familiar in the area, or maybe the first couple of times. But this is a very creative way to change behavior of people. Another thing is the fun theory. If you had there's an escalator, but if we want people to use the stairs, then this stairs in Stockholm is turned into a piano. If people walk along it, it plays. And that means that 66% now chooses the stairs instead of the escalator. And of course, there's still people that are not very good in using stairs because they're old. They can still use the escalator, but now more people use the stairs. That's also a way how people can change their behavior. Now, the last one, which is about an economic business model. I remember it from Mr. Thomas Rau. If you like to have a light, you buy a lamp. That's obvious. If you like to store your food cool, you buy a refrigerator. Probably also obvious. If you want to fly to New York, you buy an airplane. Oh no, that's not what we do. No, we don't buy airplanes, but we buy a flight ticket. So why do we buy a lamp actually? We do not need a lamp. We like to have light. So why not buy light? Ask the companies to install, and maybe not at private houses, but at businesses and universities. Why don't they let them design the lamps and construct it so they can do it in a way that is much more energy efficient and maybe also more circular? Because if we want to buy a different light, we can ask them to change it. And we are not the owners of the lamp, we are only buying the light. And we of course pay for that. And so we can do that also with cooling of food. And so we do not buy a refrigerator. No, we only buy the coolness that the refrigerator is producing. And if we don't need it anymore, because we move to another country, now we turn it back to the manufacturer. Now, I think I need to stop. I'm almost at the conclusion, so I'm going to finalize and give you the conclusion. What I think is important for you as young generation to decide on is what kind of education you would like to have. And that means that subjects are becoming important, universities are becoming important because they're still there, but also look at opportunities they give you in the education. For instance, not only the theoretical exams, but also authentic assignments, and where you can practice your problem solving skills and creativity is trained, where you can work with people from different disciplines and where you can work on project management skills, and try to set up a network, connect to people elsewhere in the world. I'm one of them. You know me a little bit now. We can collaborate and we can work together and maybe even co-create something new, something that is valuable in the Netherlands or valuable in Myanmar, or perhaps valuable in Chile or Peru. We can do it together. You have skills and talents, and we need to, see how they can be developed and become, even more valuable. I'm trying to find another word, but the English is lacking at the moment. But last important thing is that we then should be able to communicate. We should be able to understand each other in order to collaborate. And that means that we have to have language skills and also intercultural learning skills. And for education, it is important that we measure the personal development, because people are different and they have different talents and different skills. And that is important. That is more important than if we produce only one type of student for a Master of Business Administration. That is a little bit outdated. That is not what we need in the 21st century. So I'd like you to remember, Charles Darwin is not the strongest that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the one that most adaptable to change. And we're in a situation that change is constantly happening. So be prepared for change. Thank you for your attention. My motto is learning from and with each other. And I hope I challenge you a little bit.
Okay.
Atu.
Yes. Okay.
Are you still there?
Yeah, I am.
I exceeded the time a little bit.
No, it's okay. Okay. Can you stop sharing the screen? And I'm going to start receiving the question from the audience. Okay. First, I'm gonna ask if there is something they don't usually understand about the topic, the lecture. If they have some question about the lecture, is that okay? Okay. အားလုံးပဲပထမဦးဆုံး ကြားရဟိုနားလည်မယ်လို့ထင်လိုက်တာပဲပေါ့နော်ကျွန်တော်ဖြတ်တော်မပြောတော့ဘူးဆိုတာသူကပြောစရာကြီးလည်းအများများနေဆိုတဲ့ခါကျတော့လေဟုတ်ကိုလောလောဆယ်ပြခဲ့တဲ့ lecture နဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့ကိုအနေနဲ့မရှင်းတာရှိတာမေးချင်တာရှိတာကျွန်တော်လက်လေးချောင်းထောင်ပြီเนาะကျွန်တော်ကိုမြတ်နေတော့ okay
Thank you very much, Professor. I have to ask you 2 questions for our country education. The first thing is, by the way, I am a primary teacher at Burma Academy International School. I am a teacher. That's why, from the side of the teacher view, I would like to ask you, what do you want to suggest our country education system? This is the first question, because I suppose that our country education is still in 3.0. That's why I hope that in the future we are going to get the 4.0. So according to you, what do you want to suggest in order to get the 4.0 education for our country?
Yeah. Thank you for the question, Miat.
Miat
Minto. I need to practice with the names because they're quite difficult to me. So I like to practice. Thank you for this question. I repeat it a little bit in my own words because I think the question was, what do I suggest for your country and your education? To be fair, I think many universities in the Netherlands are also still in 3.0 level of education, and for me it's just more easy to advise something to them or recommend something to them because I know the context, and I do not know the context well in Myanmar because I've never visited it. I only had some students from Myanmar, and yeah, maybe one of the first advice I always give to people, if they do a kind of research or have to say something about a certain situation, they really have to study it carefully, and that means usually that they have to travel to it. And my whole approach was that it's not important because we can connect, but that means that you have knowledge about the situation and experience about the situation in your country. So we have to find out together what would be good. But maybe I assume that because I've worked in other countries in Asia in the last decades, the network, which is usually available because they have been teaching students for sometimes over 100 years, or less, that is still a very valuable network. And these people that are graduated 10 or 20 years ago have now important jobs, or at least some of them, on different levels, on perhaps governmental level, maybe on business, maybe nationally, maybe internationally, and try to get them involved in education. And that can be sometimes in a simple way by inviting them for a guest lecture and explaining them about their career. But it can also, of course, be in a more 4.0 kind of setting that we do something together, try to co-create something. But their interest should be well-equipped new employees, because they cannot get paid much for teaching or tutoring students or giving them assignments, because usually education is not able to afford that financially. If they ask their business tariff, then yeah, we cannot pay that amount of money. Is
so,
this does this? Yes, Katie, please. help
Yes.
me.
Okay. ကျွန်တော်တို့ဒီနေ့ room ထဲမှာလည်း ခြား guest တယောက်ရောက်နေတယ်ပေါ့နော်အဲ့ခါကျတော့ mask တီးရကြတော့ဒီကကျွန်တော်တို့မှာပြီးမှမွေးရဒါပေမဲ့အခုနေတာလည်းမှာရောက်နေရကြားလာပြီပေါ့နော်အဲ့ခါကျတော့ဆရာမြတ်မင်းတော်မေးရင်မိကုံပို့ပြီးတော့ကောင်းကောင်းမွန်ဖြစ်နိုင်မယ်ထင်လို့ပေါ့နော်ကျွန်တော်မအောင်ချက်လောက်ဖြစ်နိုင်ပြီ
So I will introduce myself a little bit. My name is Kathy. I come from Mandalay, Myanmar, and I live here in the Netherlands about 10 years, 20 years, and then I live elsewhere also about 10 years. So I'm a long time in living abroad. But to answer your questions, it's the whole thing, because in the Netherlands, the education budget is quite high if you talk about it. So the government have to have this budget to fund this education facilities. So I always say, if I go back to Myanmar, and you first you need to have this very solid rule of law, and the second is that the how do you call it? The tax system has to be built up very quickly, and that people are very believe in that system, because in the Netherlands, in average, people pay tax from their incomes. It's about like 35 to 50% of their incomes. So if I talk about it, people will like, that's the money you can fund for this kind of education or your infrastructure or whatever it is. So I think for younger generation, you also need to focus on what is the basic need for the country. So we don't have this infrastructure yet, but don't be spared. Like Hans said, you can always coordinate existing infrastructure to get to another level. So I will suggest that the basic need has to be there, so that you can talk about the next step. But what now you can do as young people is that you can coordinate, or you can talk with people, network with people who have the same idea, who want to have the same step. Then you still can make something out of it.
Yeah, and maybe it's
yes.
Maybe it's important to understand that I sometimes give this bit silly example to my students if they ask how to develop. When I was a child, I was very fond of football, and I'm not sure if football is a very popular sport in Myanmar, but I wanted to become a player for the national team of the Netherlands. And yeah, you can be very ambitious, but it took some time to discover that it's not easy to grow that fast. If I have different talents, and then you can say, okay, we want to play in a major league next year, but that's usually not very realistic. It goes step by step. And it requires, like Kathy also mentioned, a good context. So yeah, much of it is depending on the amount of money that the government, and actually I would say the community, because they create the government, I hope, will afford for education.
Okay.
So I have another one, because I think about your this picture when you show in your presentation with all these animals lying before the educator, say just climb the tree, and obviously the elephant won't make it, right? So it doesn't mean elephant can do nothing. So for young people, it's also very important that you know what is your talent. I remember Hans was saying once, when you can some people can communicate very easily, some people learn language very easily, but they say, oh, it's not my talent. That's not for everyone. everyone have their own talent, only they don't know it's the talent. So you should know yourself, you should know what is your talent and develop from there. So like I have never, people say, oh, how can you speak Dutch very well? I said, I don't know, I just do it. But then just last time Hans was saying, it's your talent, but you have to recognize what is your talent. You have to know yourself, you have to know it is not for everyone that can learn language very easily, or just you put some, I know some people, they just break some electronic stuff and they put it together easily. No, I can't do that. I don't know which part is which part. So know your talent is very important.
Okay, so I'm gonna move on to the next person. We might have a few, 5 minutes left to take questions. Okay, Nibali, things are long. Okay.
Yes, I'm here. Please, sir and teacher, I have a question. In your opinion, can online education give the same quality like classroom education? How do you think?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and I have this question all the time, including myself. But the answer is no. It cannot give the same quality, in my opinion, as sitting in a classroom with peers, with which you can also see things. I was very pleased to see that most of you have your camera on, but with the Dutch students that is not common. So, and if they know each other, it becomes more easy for them to ask a question. But if they don't know each other at all, then it's already out of your comfort zone to ask a question, because it usually shows that you do not know something. And that can already be risky if you do not have the courage to do that, because people might think something about you. And of course, that usually does not happen, but people are a little bit afraid for these kind of things. So it is really important to see faces expressions, to understand the social interaction. If you are uncertain, I teach now new groups of young students, first-year students, and we decided that they have to come to school, even in COVID situation, for 3 hours. It used to be 20 hours, but now 3 hours, just to get to know each other and to discuss things that you cannot easily discuss online. On the other hand, and that's why I also have this class, I could never have met you without online classes. And by knowing you now a little bit, we can get to know each other a little bit better, and we can do things together. So it also, on one hand, it cannot be replaced, but it also creates new opportunities that we should consider. But I cannot teach you 4 years of education from only online education from the Netherlands. You need your peers, you need your lecturers. Yeah. Did I answer it clearly?
Yeah. Okay. So now time we will be made in a sheet and
I know that people will like to talk to each other, even though they can do it with telephone or whatever. You cannot get this mimic body language to other side of the communication. So actually, when you speak, the language is only 10%. I read it somewhere, 10% of communication. The rest is your body language. So about 80% is your body language. So if you don't see each other, you don't trust each other, you don't know each other, what they think or what they want to have, what they want to know. So I think physical is still very important.
Yeah. I'm not sure if there are many more questions, but otherwise I would like to add an example, which is very simple. I had a group of Dutch students collaborating with a group of African students in Kigali, which is in Rwanda. And the Dutch students, after 1 week, they became annoyed because they said, we use WhatsApp for communication, but the students never reply our WhatsApp message. It takes a couple of days sometimes. And then I asked them, ask the students in Rwanda how much it cost for them to have access to the internet and where they can have access to the internet. For Dutch students, it's quite normal that they have internet connection everywhere, in public transport, outside, in nature, at home, of course, and it hardly costs anything because it's usually included in some kind of total budget for the family, or they have a very expensive cell phone with internet connection, which they can afford. But the African students, of course, did not have that. They had to travel to the university to get access to internet, to get to be able to answer the WhatsApp messages. And after understanding this from both sides, so then you need good tutors on both sides and good, then they can easily understand that, okay, that's a good reason why they're not instantly answering the WhatsApp messages. And this is just a simple thing that happens, but brings you partly to another part of the world to understand what is the local life there.
Yeah, there are a lot of questions on the list. So maybe we should go through them quickly.
So I will pick 3. So the first question comes from Nai Lin Al. He said that there are so many resources and courses available online, like Coursera, edX, futurelearn.com, and etc. So he is basically asking about, even though there are resources online, it is very hard for students in Myanmar to learn, because once you are online, you are there is much bigger probability that you go to the Facebook and other social media and spend your time on that. So he is basically asking how to manage the time for making use of for productivity, let's say. So that's his question from Yang Lin.
It's a very common question. I have this a lot at the moment, also from the Dutch students. They have plenty of time, but not able to do much because they are spending time on social networks and not on their education. So I think partly it has to do with, because I cannot really understand students at the moment in Myanmar. But from Dutch perspective, I would say, if you have to study 40 hours a week, make a tight schedule and make it fun to do. If you only have to read books, then just read maybe 1 hour a day and spend it over 7 days a week, because it's really difficult to read a lot, or to watch a lot of clips, or watch a lot of lectures that sometimes are boring. Try to find your own ways of studying, make strategies, try to find how it works, because some people, if they have to read a book, then it doesn't work. I have a son who doesn't like to read at all, and he only watches clips. And for secondary education, for instance, it works. On bachelor and master level, of course, it becomes more difficult. But usually then many students are also a little bit older. They have and they know a little bit about their talents. They know about their learning strategies, and you should be able to apply this, but also discuss this with tutors, with lecturers, how to do this and how to spend the time, and try to divide things that are difficult with things that are fun. And in COVID times, that's usually difficult, because if you can't get out, there's not a lot of fun, but maybe social network can be a little bit fun then, or watching funny clips, or
I have one tip, because my daughter is 15, and she make her own learning schedule from Pinterest. I don't know if you know Pinterest. There are so many nice schedule you can make. The design are there, actually you are really easily distracted. So you really need to stick on your schedule. It's not easy for anyone, also not easy for me. So I restrict myself to check my WhatsApp or to check my message once a day, which is after dinner, 6 to 7 o'clock. I will check all my message, and then the next day I will reply them. I don't like every time. If you have to react every time, you don't have that much time, especially your brain is, you have to switch all the time. It's really costing you a loss of energy to it. I understand most of the time the young people want to react to everything as quick as possible, but the time is yours, so it's in your hand. If you want to choose that way, it's okay. But if you say, no, I want to learn something more and make a direction, make a schedule, stick to it, and you have a lot of nice schedule on Pinterest.
ဟုတ်ပြီအဲ့ခါကျတော့ဒီကျွန်တော်အခု talk တွေတစ်လျှောက်လုံးပါလေသူက share speaker တွေကဘလို့အချိန်ကို productive ဖြစ်နေမှာအများကြီးပြောခဲ့ပါဆိုတဲ့ခါကျတော့လေနော်ဟိုနေအဓိကတော့ Google Calendar တို့ပဲဖြစ်ဖြစ် Pinterest တို့ပဲဖြစ်ဖြစ်ကိုယ် schedule လုပ်ပြီးတော့ dream book တွေပါလေအစားပြောပါဆိုတဲ့ခါကျတော့လေအဲ့ဒါကြီးကျွန်တော်ပြန်ပြောနေတော့နော် okay this is going to be the last question I think it is also very important the question came from Yamali Cho Yadana Lin. So some of the students are stay accustomed to traditional way, like the education 2.0 in Myanmar. So basically, it is very, it is quite a challenge for some students to convert into education 3.0 for now, until now. So what would be the challenge to motivate the students to convert the learning system by getting used to the online learning? What would be your suggestion and advice to those students in Myanmar who are not familiar with the type of learning style?
Yeah, maybe first to say something, I hope it feels like a relief. If we talk about generations of education, that doesn't mean that in 2021 we have education 4.0. That's not that simple. So in 2020, in 2021, education 2.0 will still exist, 3.0 probably exist. And like I already put in the chat, I think 4.0, I do not know really a good example, because majority of the institutes and the lecturers are not ready for it. In my own university, I have plenty of lecturers that do not speak English well enough to teach. Then it becomes very difficult to collaborate with people abroad. So that is something that it slowly changes, and that means that for people that are still preferring education 2.0, the important thing is that it is a kind of quality that you have to learn things in such a way that it is predominant in education 2.0. So it means that you can probably still are good in remembering, understanding, and applying perhaps, maybe also automatically. And of course, this is still in many cases of society very valuable. But slowly, I guess, it will also requires new talents and new skills, and a talent is something you cannot train. You have it, or maybe you do not know it, you have it, then you can train it, but you cannot learn everything at the same level. So discover what are your talents. You can on a basic level also develop yourself in other skills, like creativity, because that becomes really important for a career, because I hope it will last for something like 40 or 50 years, but not in the same way as probably your parents had.
Yes.
So flexibility.
I think now in Burma it's already changing because they are going to implement the new system. So the government also know that it's time to change, right? So it will take time. It will take a long time. And like I said, you first need to have a basic infrastructure to get the big step, you know. But I see changes coming, and you are already having different thoughts, a different approach to how you want to learn something, right? So your generation is really, really different than our generation. When I was in Myanmar, we don't have any access to any news at all. As you know, we can't call, we can't do nothing. We don't know nothing about the international situation. We only have like half an hour of BBC News in the evening time. I still remember when I was 15, 16. So your world is really different than your parents. You are having already this new idea how to do the education. How you know now what is 2.0, 3.0, what is 4.0. It's the way. It's the direction you already know. Beforehand, we don't know anything about it. But then if you want to know more about it, Hans is giving also a lecture on Hysan, passion and profession. So you can develop more with Hans if you want. So Batu can send the link to you. And another way is if you want to study in the Netherlands, you can contact me. I will put my Facebook link on here on the chat. So everyone know if you want to know any practical stuff to study in the Netherlands, or which study you want to know, I will connect you to current students. I don't really suggest this year to come, but you can have a look at my Facebook. And then if you need any information about study in the Netherlands, please. And I'm here to help. I speak Burmese. Right now, I don't speak Burmese because Hans don't speak Burmese, and I want everyone to understand everything.
You could say something.
You can ask your parents to contact me if they want to know any information. I can explain them to in Burmese. I already have a few Burmese students here. It's very different, and I will suggest you first to follow Hans on Hysan, passion and profession, so that you know what's your talent, what you want to do, what is your directions, how you can develop yourself, how you can help your country, how there's a lot of things to discover, please. And then sign up for Hans first, and then when you need more help to study in the Netherlands, I'm here.
Okay, hope I
Thank you.
Okay, hope you are the young long Jesus did Professor Hans come at the Dini Lata baby going to the giant if you all let you do it. No, isolation, you know, the power slide, you know, Facebook and Martin share with me. The Yabama, Sia, John Yumin, Sia, John Yumin City, no, Sia, do Sia, John Yumin John, American University College, my Lord, that Chinese, the Lumia, say, high solution, Yai Pinayam, of Yolene, can allow Nala, I need to give you one piano again. No, okay. Bye bye. Okay. Thank you, Professor Hans. Thank you, Ms. Kathy. Okay.
Thank you, Batu.
Yep, bye-bye. Yeah.
You will share the slides with them?
Yeah, I will definitely share.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the end, there's also many examples of what I thought is interesting kind of collaboration.
Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely. I looked through it. It's a lot of slides.
It is. But
Okay,
I came to the conclusion 10 minutes, 15 minutes after.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.